Wow. In the Philippines, it is regarded as the tree of life simply because of what it provides. It protects, it heals, and it feeds. Now, apart from the water, a mature piece of this fruit can be processed into cosmetics, oil, soap, and other beauty products. Now, while the coconut has always been a feature on the Barbadian landscape and we have enjoyed the water from this fruit, no one would deny that it has quickly become an industry or perhaps a business in Barbados. The coconut, something for everyone. Hello and welcome. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. My colleague Carla Daniel now takes us on a special journey of the coconut.
Today we are going to be talking about the ubiquitous coconut tree. Now this is something that we are all familiar with, whether it is from seeing them growing along our coastlines. In every picture of Barbados you will see a bright white sandy beach with coconut palms spraying in the breeze, or maybe it's simply from driving along our highways and seeing the guys peddling their coconut water and their coconut flesh on this side of the road. Perhaps you grew up with your grandmother and she would have given you a part of the coconut husk to scrub those dirty pots and pans. Regardless of your place in society, regardless of your home in Barbados, whether it's inland in St. George or St. Thomas, or on the coastline like St. James or St. Andrew, you would be very much aware of the coconut tree. Now, the question really is the coconut tree a tree or is it a plant? And that is one of the things that we will be answering today as we journey among the palms and discover the origins of the coconut. The first question we are going to answer is our beloved coconut a tree or not? Now, as you can see, it has a trunk. Trees tend to have trunks. And it has these things which look a whole lot like branches. However, botanically, this coconut is most definitely a palm and not a tree. Trees are, by nature, plants with strong branches, and these things, which do look a whole lot like branches, are actually the leaves of the coconut tree. So while it has a tall, slender trunk, and it can be very tall, reaching in some places almost 30 meters, it does not have branches. These coconut leaves can also be very long. They can reach 3, even 4 meters in length. Here's an example of a very, very long branch. As you can see, I'm about 5, or maybe give or take a couple inches, 5 feet tall, and this is much, much longer than I am. Now, the branch, well, what we would call the coconut branch, but what is in fact a single coconut leaf, is pinnate, and all that really means is that one leaf is made up of a number of leaflets. Now, the coconut tree, and we know it everywhere as a tree. So while it may not be botanically a tree, we cannot exclude it because culturally, and as far as everybody else is concerned, the coconut tree is indeed a tree. Now, the coconut tree, how exactly did it get its name? What is this whole coconut thing? Where is this cocoa, where it come from? Now, some people believe that it's due to an Iberian word, el coco, and this was used to refer to a hairy monster. And if you've ever opened a dry coconut, you would see that that hard seed is encased by a dry, hairy flesh, and people believe that's where this similarity arose from. Others believe that it's from a Portuguese word meaning monkey, cocos, and that's because the nut has 3 germinating pores, and when you look at it just right, it looks exactly like a monkey face. So regardless of the origin of the word, it has become so synonymous with this plant that wherever you go, once you hear the word coconut, everybody knows exactly what you are talking about. Now, how do you identify a coconut tree? A coconut tree has a long, slender trunk, which may range in color from a light cakey colored brown to a pale or dark gray. Now, this trunk is marked by a number of rings, and these rings are actually scars that were left when the leaves would have fallen from the trunk. Now, the trunk is crowned by a number of tall, long, spiky leaves, and you also have the typical coconut fruit, which is usually a bright green to a bright yellow color when green and grows in bunches almost like grapes. Now, when you see a coconut tree, you see a tree that many people have referred to as the Swiss Army knife of the plant world. What exactly do they mean by that? Well, this tree, which has traveled all around the world, when persons were first colonizing countries, coconut tree was first brought to the west coast of Africa by the Portuguese. And from the west coast of Africa, material from those plantations were taken over to the Americas by the Europeans. So all of the coconut trees throughout the West Indies would have originated from that plant material, which was found in the west coast of Africa but originally brought from the Indian Ocean. Some of that material also made its way to the coast of Brazil, where coconut plantations can still be found today.
Quite a lot of research has been done over the years about the origin of the coconut fruit and palm. Areas of research point to the South Asian soil. Other areas of that research point to the region of South America. Now, in calling attention to the origin, Carla talks about fossils found many years ago.
But where did this amazing tree originate? We know that currently the coconut tree is found in almost every tropical region of the world, but where did it first come from? Now, fossils have been found in New Zealand to show that 15 million years ago, coconut trees were thriving on the New Zealand coastline. Fossils even older than that have been found in Asia. In Bangladesh, it is widely accepted that the oldest fossil records of coconut trees exist. And even before that, there are historical texts in Sri Lanka which show that coconut trees existed there as early as in the 1st century BC. There's, however, a lot of controversy surrounding this issue. Kenneth Olson and B. Gunn have used modern DNA techniques to attempt to bring some clarity to this very widely debated topic. They would have taken samples from 1,300 coconut trees all along the world. And what Olson described as an expected mishmash didn't exactly occur. Because coconut trees have been taken around the world by colonizers, explorers, and travelers for thousands and thousands of years, he believed that it would be almost impossible to decipher the mix of genealogy and DNA sequences that he would have found. This was, however, not to be the case. What his work surprisingly revealed is that the genealogy of the coconut shows 2 distinct lineages of cultivation. One originating in the Pacific Ocean, which would have included areas such as Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. The other in the Indian Ocean basin, including places such as Sri Lanka and southern India. Now, we know that our coconut material here in the Caribbean region would have come from West Africa, and the origin of that material is the Indian Ocean basin.
From the Indian Ocean, Carla now takes us to the scenic northeastern coastline of Barbados.
When persons normally think about Cove Bay, St. Lucie, they think about dramatic views, pounding surf, caves, and chalky colored cliffs. What they often don't recognize is that one of the most striking features of this location is this coconut grove behind me. Now, this coconut grove sets the perfect scene for the story that I'm going to be telling you today. This story has its roots firmly placed in Malaysian folklore, and it took place in an area that I imagine looked exactly like this one. There once was a very, very old man. He was believed to be perhaps 1,000 years old, and he lived on the shoreline in a cave, perhaps like one that we could find around this area. Now, this man was thought to be very wise. He knew everything. He had an answer for all of people's problems. So persons would often go for him, seeking solutions for whatever issues they had. Maybe it was illness. Maybe they just needed advice about their love lives. This morning in particular, a young man turned up at the entrance of his cave. He had one simple request. He wanted to be useful to people for the rest of his life. The old man pondered his request for a short time, went into the back of the cave, rummaged around. At this point, the young man was a little bit apprehensive because he really was not sure what type of answer he would get to his question. After this, the man pulled a box out from the back of the cave, handed it to the young man, and said, "This is a magic box. In this box is the answer that you are seeking. However, there's one catch. You can only open this box after you have reached your home." Now, this young man took the box, he said thank you, and he was overjoyed. He immediately left the cave and set out to go to his village. Now, as he was walking, the box began to get heavier and heavier, and soon he began to be filled with curiosity. He started to wonder, is it something to eat in this box? Perhaps it's something made of golds or riches and I can sell it and make some money. He got more and more curious, and soon his palms started to itch. Eventually, not being able to take it anymore, he opened the box. And immediately he was turned into, you might have guessed it, a coconut tree. Now his wish was fulfilled. The coconut tree, being useful in so many ways, allowed him to be useful to his villagers for the entire lifespan. However, it did not end exactly as he would have hoped.
And if that were not enough, Carla now takes us to Tahiti and shares a legend.
Not surprisingly, in light of its origins in the region, the coconut tree is one of the most common trees in Tahiti and her islands. The Polynesians tell a story about the creation of the coconut tree, and it involved a beautiful girl with sun-kissed skin and long silky hair. Her name was Hina, and she was betrothed to the Prince of Eels. Now, Hina was terrified because of his physique. He had an enormous body and a gigantic head. Afraid to be married to him, she ran away and went to the house of the fishing god Hero. Now, Hero was dazzled by her beauty, and he felt sorry for her because of her sad story. He plucked a strand of her hair and used it to fish the Prince of the Eels out of the river. Once fished, he chopped his body to pieces, keeping the head. The head he wrapped in leaves and he gave to Hina. He told her that now her problems were over, finally, and she could return to her family. But there was one thing. Once she got to her family, she could destroy the head of the Prince of the Eels, but she could never put it on the ground. Before he had died, the Prince of Eels had looked Hina in the eyes and said to her that men, including her, that hated him, would once kiss him on the lips and thank him. And even though he would die, his promise would last eternally. Now Hina was overjoyed. She was relieved to be free from that huge burden, and she immediately left and ventured on to return to her family. Now this journey was a long and arduous one, and as time passed, Ina forgot the warning from the gods. One day she was hot and sweaty, and she passed an inviting river. She decided to take a bath, and she set the eel's head down on the ground. Immediately as she put it down, the eel's head penetrated the ground, and from it grew an enormous tree. This tree was the coconut tree. It had a solid trunk similar to an eel's body, and from the top grew fronds of leaves that looked exactly like hair. Now this tree was considered to be taboo, and Ina was cursed by the gods to remain close to the river because of it. Men were prohibited from going anywhere near to the tree. Now as time went on, a terrible drought struck the land, and the coconut tree was the only one to resist the sun. As men grew more and more desperate, they eventually turned to this last tree that was standing and plucked her fruit. From it, they obtained a delicious water and a nutritious meat. But in order to get that water, they had to puncture one of the 3 holes on the top, which many recognized appeared to be a face with 2 eyes and a wide, gaping mouth, screaming in horror. Clearly the face of the eel god in his last moments. Now Ina too eventually was forced to drink from this fruit. And as her lips touched that wide, gaping mouth, the prince of the eel's prophecy was finally fulfilled.
Now let us take a look at the pollination of this palm.
Now, coconut trees, when they flower, they have both male and female flowers on the same inflorescence. These flowers may be cross-pollinated, which is where pollen from another tree will come to that tree and the flower will be pollinated. Or they may be self-pollinated, where you get pollen coming from a male flower going to a female flower from the same plant. Now, these flowers in turn produce fruit, which is what we know as the coconut. Coconuts will naturally stay on the coconut tree until they've dried. And once they've dried, this is when they become all brown and light, and then they will fall from the coconut tree. Coconut trees typically grow along the coastline, and these coconuts will eventually end up in the water where they are quite buoyant because they're very light. Coconuts can travel very long distances in the water, and they will maintain their germability, meaning that they will be viable for quite a long time. Now, once this coconut washes up on a sandy shore, then you'll get the radicle breaking through one of the germinating pores, and that coconut will start to germinate and grow into a small tree.
Now exactly where are they generally found? What about their preferred temperature, rainfall? Where do they grow well?
Now, coconuts are mainly found in the tropics, even though you can sometimes find them as far north as Norway, where they're grown under very special conditions. Coconut trees prefer temperatures on average of about 27 degrees Celsius, and while they're able to tolerate dry, saline conditions, they often need rainfall of about 100 to 120 centimeters per year. Now, because coconut trees can tolerate saline soils, you might think that they are wonderful trees to plant on the beach. However, the coconut tree root system, which is very fibrous and very shallow, does not necessarily make it a good tree for holding our sandy coastlines together. Because what happens when we have rough waves is that the waves will wash the sand away from the base of the coconut tree, and it will expose those roots. Once the roots are exposed, then you get the sand being cut away from underneath the root ball, and eventually the coconut tree, because it is so top heavy, will start to lean. Once it leans, it eventually falls over and loosens the surrounding sand, meaning that the next few waves will erode even more of the coastline. So while coconut trees are very, very prominent on our coast, they're not something that we will suggest you plant on the coastline because they do not hold the sand together as well as other species, for example, the manchineel and or sea grape and almond trees.
Let us look at the fruit, the water, the nut, the different types of water that you get from the fruit. And why is that so? Of course, we cannot deny the many health benefits.
Now we started talking about the coconut tree fruit. Now this is one of, I would have to say, the most useful fruits that anybody could ever find. Now the coconut tree fruit is full of a delicious water. Fruits vary in size and shape. Some of them can be as big as a man's head and can weigh 1 to 2 kilograms when they're green. Now this coconut water takes a variety of forms. If you've ever had coconut water, you will know you can get some water that tastes almost light and sweet and carbonated, very fizzy, and other water which has a more green and grassy taste. And this taste may be determined by the ripeness of the coconut as well as the particular tree that the coconut fruit was obtained from. But one thing that is very certain is the health benefits that can be derived from the coconut water. In addition to the coconut water, you have what is called the coconut flesh, and that coconut is used in a variety of culinary dishes, from being used in curries to rice, as well as being used in sweets, such as our local sweetbread and our sugar cake.
And of course, that is not enough. We could all think of many more ways in which the coconut can be used.
Now in addition, the dried flesh or meat can also be used to produce coconut oil. And this coconut oil is again used for cooking, and it's believed to be one of the healthier oils. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But it can also be used to place on your skin. It can be used for your hair. It has a variety of uses. Now the husk from the coconut, people have used that in craft. People use the actual hard endocarp. They use that to make jewelry. It can be burnt to make charcoal. There are so many uses that we do not have the time to talk about all of them today, but we will definitely be getting to them at a later date when we talk about the many uses of not just the coconut fruit, but the entire coconut tree.
And we do look forward to joining Carla again next week at the same time and learning of the many uses of the coconut and the coconut palm. I'm Sherwood McCaskey. Thanks for your time. This has been The Coconut, something for everyone.